I think that there is so many unsaid and very loud, expectations that I think that go around this space. Because at the end of the day, yes, we are worshipers first, but it's also entertainment. It's also a space. It's also a business. That is something that I'm still trying to navigate in my life, of understanding how to remain strong and confident in what God has called me to do, and understanding that this is also a place where He's blessed me now to be able to sustain myself in a financial way, right? And in the entertainment space, to be able to move in that way. But I think that
coming live on your radio, what they want, that real and raw, how they get it, DJ Focus, what we doing, making music, reaching the corner, and it's all for the kingdom, and we gon' make sure they know it. Ooh, we gon' take it there. I like red letters over trap beats, the Fixx is saying, ooh, DJ Focus, tell him turn you up, ooh, DJ Focus, tell him turn you up, ooh.
Welcome back. DJ Focus, Dice Gamble. You tap back into the Fixx, your number one source of faith-infused hip-hop, R&B, and poetry. It's time for the spiritual detox. Y'all know the vibes. Y'all know how we do it. We like to, we do our thing in Christian hip-hop and Christian R&B, but it's still all stemmed from the gospel. Don't y'all tiptoe around the conversation of just knowing that sometimes you just need a good worship pastor. I'm going to give her that worship pastor to lead you into a good worship song. But listen, she is a super talented, not only singer, but she's a writer. You might have seen her around one of the biggest collectives in the game right now, the one and only Melanie Adorno. What's going on, sis?
hello. It is so great to be here.
Listen, we appreciate you taking some time. Excited for you because you got new music.
Yeah.
Pretty big for you. You getting ready to drop. So we got a lot to talk about, a little bit of time. Let's go back first. For those who may not know you, share a little bit of your faith journey, kind of like what God has shown you, and who is Melody when you talk about from a spiritual standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. So I was born and raised in the church. I was a pastor's kid, grew up in the pews of the church. I am second generation Latina, so I was in a bilingual church, Spanish and English church, and definitely grew up in like the Pentecostal charismatic movement. And it was something that I really believe that has created a great roots in my life. And I always had a relationship with the Lord, but I don't think that it was until I got into high school and started entering into my college years where I really took my relationship with the Lord seriously, really understanding Him beyond just a savior, but that He was a father, that He was a friend, He was king, that He was sovereign over my life. And it was that journey that I had to go through to really allow for God to unlock greater character of who He is in my life. Because even though I was born and raised in the church, I think that quite honestly, I just played the part well. I think that a lot of the times, especially growing up as a pastor's kid, I know that there's a lot of others that probably can relate. We feel like there's this role that we need to play, that we have to be perfect, that we have to set that example to others. But I think that pressure got to me to a point where I really didn't understand who God really was in my life. And I think that I only saw Him from a certain point of view, very superficial, until I got to a place where life just started hitting me. I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, mental health. I entered into a really terrible crisis with my health, my physical health, that took me to a place where all I had left was for God to just come into my life, and I needed to lean on His strength because I had nothing left to lean on but Him. And I think that it was in that moment where I was able to really see the fullness of His love and His light in my life like never before. And that's a short version. But definitely just that's kind of the journey I've been on until today, continuing to see His goodness unlock in so many different layers of my life. And worship obviously has been a big part of my journey. I grew up singing, but it was nothing that I really took seriously or felt like it was something that God would use to catapult me into my day-to-day life and it be a career for me. Because again, just through all of the insecurities and church hurt and all of these things, I filtered my relationship with the Lord with that. And here I am today, being able to lift my hands and to see that He's faithful in everything. So yeah.
How did you said something I want to get a little bit more. I want you to elaborate a little bit more on how did you deal with your church hurt? I think a lot of people in ministry, this runs them away from the church. They
Yeah.
don't want anything to do with the church anymore. So for you, when you whatever that church hurt may have been, you don't have to say specifically what it was, but how did you process it and deal with it to get past it not hindering your relationship with God?
Yeah. I let myself sit in the uncomfortability of allowing myself to lead into the moments of doubt and even anger, and questions that I had, towards the Lord with people. And I think a lot of the times we'll try to justify those things by suppressing those emotions, or we'll
Mhm.
try to say, oh, no, it's this person's fault. And we try to shift the blame onto others. And even though, yes, that hurt is very real and people hurt people and we face those trials when it comes to church hurt. But I think that what I learned through it was allowing the Lord to sit in my process and allowing for him to really walk with me through the messy and through all of the things that I needed to allow myself to really work through. And so what I would tell someone is to lean in and let yourself sit in that mess and watch and wait and see how the Lord will meet you where you're at. You don't have to get to a certain point in your healing. Allow him to carry you through that process.
That's good. So when did you know you had it though? So when I say you had it, the singing, when did you
Yeah.
know that it's one thing to grow up in, everybody grows up in the church choir. Let's be very clear. But when did you know like you had something special that you could do it professionally?
Yeah, I mean, I think growing up as a kid, there was always, those words that people would give to me, like, obviously the typical, you're going to the nations and this and all of these, just positive reinforcement in my life that people would say, man, like you have a call over your life. But I don't think that it was until truthfully in college, I had joined, I went to Southeastern University, I joined their worship team, and I started off as a co-worship leader on the team. And I also started writing. And I think it was through the passion of songwriting, honestly, that I leaned into a different part of my craft that I had never leaned into before. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, wow, like, I think this is something that I want to cultivate in my life and continue to do for the rest of my life. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I want to lean in and I want to discover that. And so I think in college is when I started to really gain a little more confidence. I think I would say in what the Lord had called me to and really taking my craft seriously and putting up my part to shape that and to mold that.
What kept you doing it for God though? Let's be very clear. So
Yeah,
you recognize your gift, and I get it, but let's be very clear. It's a lot of money on the other side.
of
What
course.
kept you to do it and not do like something on the mainstream secular side?
Yeah, it was the only thing that was my center and my peace. It was the one thing that I felt the most connected to God through every storm in my life. And everything that I questioned the most, the times that I felt the most connected to the Lord was when I would sing onto Him and when I would be in my room and writing songs and journaling, words and just it would flow in a way where I think I never felt like I don't know, I didn't have that need because I never even saw it as something that again I would even do professionally. So I think when it came to it, it was like, this is the gift that God has given onto me. And the best way that I can steward it is to steward it with open hands and to let it be an offering back onto Him.
That's good. So when did you transition? I believe I read you did some youth pastoring at some point.
I did.
How did that happen? Like, come on, walk us through that because that's a whole different thing.
You and I both. You and I both, because what in the world happened? Exactly. So it actually was right before the pandemic hit. It was right in the cusp of 2019 to 2020. I was graduating. I had a few jobs lined up, and then 2020 hit, and the world shifted. Obviously, things just changed in a crazy way, and I had come back home into my local church, and there was a need, and it was something that I had never imagine myself ever leaning into,
Wow.
but the Lord just kept the Holy Spirit just kept tugging into my spirit that um Jay, just dive in. Even if you're scared, this is something that I am going to give you, just the heavenly perspective, the wisdom, the guidance to be able to uphold. And our youth at the time was struggling. Our youth pastor had just transitioned out. There was just so much chaos happening even in the world that I was like, Lord, I don't know how, I don't know why you've chosen someone like me to to guide this next generation, but I'm just going to trust that there's something that you're birthing through me and that I'm going to learn from these young people. And so I did that for 2 years, so from 2020 to 2022. And it was actually one of the craziest times, one of the most challenging times, but one of the most rewarding seasons of my entire life to be able to lead these young people in a time of such great uncertainty in our world, in our nation. And schools were shut down. And so we were having services like this. We were having Zoom calls. We were having prayer calls until we were finally able to come back into the building. So it was a crazy time. And all I could say is, to sum it up, how did I get there? Obedience. Just saying yes.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
What is your what for the listeners? Just talk about your spiritual regimen and what do you do to make sure you have a ready yes when you hear clearly from God? Like, are you one that has to sit with your word every day, meditate, fasting? Just talk us through your spiritual regimen that keeps you sound to where when you hear God, you act on it and you submit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that yes, fasting, prayer, the word, but one thing that I can say all of those things encompassed is even when I first wake up, I take that time to acknowledge his presence in that morning. And that will be the first thing that I do. Even when I go to reach for my phone, like I have to stop myself and I'm like, no, Lord, let me honor you and thank you first for the day that you have made, that you have given me breath in my lungs. And I think gratitude is something that is so easily overlooked as a practice as believers. We need to wake up and be grateful every single day, whether our circumstance looks like something we should be thankful for or not. The fact that we can still give him honor and say that, God, you are good, it, I believe, just puts this covering over our hearts from bitterness, a covering over our hearts from resentment, because we are able to continue to see him as a good father, to see him for who he truly is in this world, even in times where it's hard to see it. And so I would say gratitude, yes, prayer and fasting and diving into his word, and also just leaning into the details of the everyday, the miracles in the everyday, the fact that I'm able to wake up with breath in my lungs, the fact that I'm able to wake up and step outside and breathe in a fresh air, to be able to see his creation out there. I think having eyes to be able to see the details of who he is in the everyday.
That's good. What were some of the challenges, you being the youth pastor? I know it was only briefly for 2 years. Like, just walk us through maybe, what was a conversation you would have? Because I know it had to be some young ladies that would come
Yeah.
to you. I'm just trying to think of the music that was popping back then. I would say, I'm going to just use Cardi B. And shouts out to you, Cardi B, if you're listening. This is no shade to you. But how do you have a conversation with a young lady, a young teen, who's coming to you? She got this soundtrack from some of the Cardi B music or Nicki Minaj or whoever it may be, Sexy Red. How do you have that conversation of, okay, let's listen to this song, let's talk about these lyrics, and then let's talk about how God sees you as a kingdom lady?
Right, absolutely. Well, I think first and foremost, one thing that I can say is that um if there was someone, right, a young person that had come to me listening to, that type of music, secular music, whatever the case is, I think there's one thing that we can admire the art. Just like when we walk into an art gallery, we can look at an art, we can see it, we can acknowledge it for what it is, the beauty that it carries, the craft, the person, the artist behind it, knowing that it took time and effort to be able to paint those lines, to, draw those lines and to create a beautiful picture that we get to stand on the outside and admire and look. I think it's one thing in stepping into a gallery and taking that piece and bringing it into our home and actually
Mm.
letting it sit inside of the place that is the most vulnerable in our lives. And so something that I kind of brought perspective with our young people is that especially when we're listening to these words have power. The things that we listen to, the things that we let sit and harbor and fester into our hearts really affects the way that we walk in our day to day, our character, who we surround ourselves with. And so understanding that if you're listening to something that then starts to shift your character, your emotions, your being, then maybe it's time to take a second and look back and say, what is it that I'm filling my spirit with that is shifting my perspective in a negative way, that is making me feel as if I'm not worthy, as if I'm less than, as anxious and feeling afraid, or, bringing in, thoughts that I keep on combating in my life that are impure, or whatever that might look like. And so, Yeah, that would be the approach that I would probably take, because at the end of the day, the arts is such a beautiful space. There's so many amazing creatives, and I think we need to give credit where credit is due and honor people for what they do. But we also have to be aware of guarding ourselves and understanding that our bodies and our minds are such sensitive things. We're such visuals, we're auditory people that they affect us. We have to guard that as well.
Come on and walk us through, how did this Maverick City music situation happen? Like, come
Right.
on and walk us back. Was it a surreal moment for you when you got the call or you got the introduction? Walk us through how that even started.
Yeah, so I would say it was back in 2019, and I'll have to be real with you. When I got a DM from them through Instagram from Maverick City, the group, and at the time I believe that it was the song Most Beautiful that was kind of circling around. It was one that was really taking off. And so I remember hearing it here and there, but I really wasn't familiar with Maverick City and just their heart, the vision, what they stood for. But they messaged me like, "Hey, we see that you sing and we would love to have you come out to a write with us." So back in 2019, they were like, "Hey, like we'll fly you out to Nashville." I went for my first writing camp where there I met, Chandler Moore for the first time. And at the time, Stephanie Gretzinger, who was there, and Dante, and just amazing writers and worshipers, Naomi Rain. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I was just taken aback and even wondering, I'll be honest with myself, I was like, what am I doing here? Because how did you even find me? So I know that even in that time, that was such a God ordained moment and like, God divine appointment. I started writing with them. So I started off as a writer and wrote with Maverick City Music. And then back in at the cusp of 2020, right at the beginning, Aaron Moses, who was also part of Maverick City Music, he approached me and said, "Hey, what would it look like if we were to launch something called Maverick City Musica?" And this would be a Latin expression of Maverick City and what we're doing. And I'm like, bro, I'm game. Like, I am down. Let's do it. And we just started to, pray on it. We started to kind of put feelers out there of different worshipers that we would bring together. And in 2020, right before like the really big hit of the pandemic, it was still very early on, we had our very first live recording in an Airbnb in Atlanta, that they call it the Goat House. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's,
I am.
yeah, the Airbnb, the Goat House. And so we got there. I actually drove for the first time, meeting this girl for the first time. Her name was Karen, and she was a part of the Maverick City Musica team as well during that time. We're driving up to Atlanta for the first time, meeting each other, getting to know. It's like, so what do you do? What do you do? And we're like just enjoying that process together. We get there, and man, let me tell you that the moment that we just started singing together. Like it just, we didn't even like the cameras were rolling, whatever, but we just said, hey, let's just take a moment. Let's just worship together. The synergy, the immediate connection, the immediate feeling of family. I think that's also something, even in our culture, we take pride in, like, that just feels like warmth. Like the moment that, us Latinos get together, like, it's just like your family, like we're locked in. And so you could just really feel that translating into like even our music. And we had the honor and the privilege to be able to travel to open up for Maverick City when they started their first arena tours. And we were able to join alongside with them and be able to sell out what is called the Choli, which is in Puerto Rico. It's the stadium that is there, and just be able to experience God in such a way that we had never before and bridge that gap as well, being second, third generation Latinos that maybe some that don't speak the language, but know that that is their culture and that's a part of who they are and their DNA. And to be able to see that bridge happen was so refreshing, and it was so beautiful to be a part of such a movement like that.
Is it still something that's like, do you really understand like what you're a part of, like when you talk about in history, like has that sunk in? And also too as well, what's it like, because like because I asked Dante this and I want to ask you too as well,
Yeah.
what's it like to like create this new version of the choir? Because in essence that's what you guys basically do. You just made it new,
Yeah.
fresh, it's more contemporary, but you guys pretty much just made your new version of a choir. What's that like? And then has it really sunk in, like when when I go to heaven, like I was a part of a collective
Yeah.
that people will talk about for years to come?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you just said that, and get chills all over my body because it's so humbling. Like, like I felt so, again, so unworthy at the time. I was like, who am I? Like, this is so much bigger than me, and I think that I just feel so humbled, so honored to have been a part of this movement and still carry so many friendships along the way, because I still am able to stay connected to all of these amazing people, and we're family. We really are through and through. And to be able to see how everyone has been just shaping their journey, I really believe that Maverick City, at least in my life, and I know for many others, we can attest to that, was the catalyst to what the Lord wanted to continue in our lives and to continue to allow. But we needed to see each other and say, oh, you're running this race with me too. Oh, you're doing the same thing. And we were able to bring people who weren't the same, but like-minded. And we had, a same goal, the same vision to bring glory unto the Lord, but in a fresh way and in a way that embodied the kingdom of heaven. Every tribe, every nation, every tongue coming together for one mindset to give honor unto the Lord.
That's good. So come on, before I get you out of here, you got a new project you dropping. Come on, talk about the inspiration behind it, what
Oh,
people can expect. Come on, talk about it.
yeah, so this project is called Entronado My Heart Your Home. It is a bilingual, actually a trilingual project.
Okay.
And I think just that in itself, it's Spanish, English, and I have a song as well that is Spanish and Portuguese. And just bringing that representation of unifying. And I think that same spirit, right, of what Maverick even did in my life is sparking that up of knowing like, sometimes we won't fit in that box, right? I think that we can definitely try to put worship, right, in different genres in a box, and it's like, this is your lane, this is my lane. But no, understanding that especially when it comes to giving honor unto the King, it sounds different for everyone. Someone's worship isn't going to sound the same as your worship, and so what I pray and I hope that what people listen to in this is that they hear the united sound of heaven, that when people also listen to these songs, that they are drawn back into a place where they can open their hearts once more and reclaim their position, and allow for God to enter into their hearts and say, Lord, my heart is your home. May this heart be your dwelling place, and may you be enthroned upon every praise and every worship, that whatever circumstance I'm walking through, that I know that you're still worthy to be praised.
Can we expect some collaborations on this project, or is it just you? Come on, talk about it.
Okay, I will dive in. So I have a good friend of mine who's also part of Maverick City Music. You are definitely most familiar with him, Joel Barnes.
Yeah.
And so we just actually put out our single called Be Enthroned. And honestly, this record is like, I believe, like the anthem of this entire project. Like, this is a song that I want to continue to sing for generations to generations. And so I have him on our project. I have a good friend of mine as well. Her name is Julia Vitoria. She's a Brazilian worship artist, and she sings on this project as well. That does a song called Sonido del Cielo. She pushed me too in my languages. I like pushed myself. I sang in Portuguese for the first time, so that was so fun. And then another friend of mine, his name is Henok Gabriel. He is with Upper Room. He's originally from Puerto Rico, and he is also a Spanish bilingual worship artist as well. And we also have a record on there that I think is so special. And actually, it was translated. It was originally an English song that I had written originally. It was called Open Heaven with a group of friends of mine in Maverick City, and then we translated it in Spanish. And it just took a whole different form in itself. So it's also another great, one of my favorite records on the project as well.
What did this project teach you when you finally completed this project? And I know you're getting ready to drop; it's not out yet.
Yeah.
But what did this project teach you, just in general, about yourself? Was there something that God kind of showed you?
Yep, absolutely. Letting go of control, and I think even a perfectionist mindset. When I was first writing these songs too, they weren't even being written for myself. I was trying to pitch them to other people. And right before that shift happened, I just kind of sat with the songs and I kept like going back to them. And the Lord was like, this is the sound I want you to birth and want you to bring out into the world. And it also helped me to lean into him in ways that I hadn't before, because I'm very hard on myself. I think a lot of creators can relate to that. We are our own worst critics. And so this really taught me how to let go of that control, that surrender, that perfectionist mindset, and say, God, this is my raw, authentic, just unfiltered worship onto you.
You know, thank you for sharing. And I'm just sitting here and just listening to you talk. Are there any moments that you feel like the industry kind of tries to pull you away from your purpose? Because you speak with such authority, such boldness. Are there moments that you feel like, I need to, maybe pray about it for a minute, sit with it for a minute.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel rushed in that area?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there is so many unsaid and very loud, expectations that I think that are go around this space because at the end of the day, yes, we are worshipers first, but it's also entertainment. It's also a space. It's also a business. And so I think that that is something that I'm still trying to navigate in my life of understanding how to remain strong and confident in what God has called me to do and understanding that this is also a place where he's blessed me now to be able to sustain myself in a financial way, right? And in the entertainment space to be able to move in that way. But I think that just understanding that when those voices get a little bit louder than the voice of God in my life and I start to feel the anxiety and the stress, that's how I know that I'm leaning into the voice of man and not the voice of God. And that's kind of helped me learn how to differentiate that while also being multiple and open that this is a space that I'm not going to know everything and I'm still learning and I'm still growing and I'm okay with that. And I want to learn from others and I'm open to being moldable, but also understanding my non-negotiables and knowing that at the end of the day, I'm a daughter first. I'm a daughter of the king first. That royal priesthood of knowing that this is who I am first, and then everything else is secondary.
When it's all said and done, what do you want people to remember about your music and take away from your music?
Whew, that is a loaded question. But I think in the simplest terms, um, I want for people to understand the duality of who God is in their lives, that He is not only Father, but He is King, that He is not only a friend, but He is also holy. And knowing that no matter where we are in life, he is accessible to us. And I pray that people see that through the music, in the way that I live my life, and a love that is unconditional, and that I will be able to show people how to lean into grace and hold people's hands and walk with them and meet them in their process and say, hey, let's continue to walk together. You're not alone. We're going to ride this. I know you feel far from him now, but trust me, there is hope on the end. And I just really want for people to see a friend in me and that people know that this music is a space for you to return back to the arms of your father.
That's good. Listen, are you married?
I'm not, so no.
How do you balance that? Are you dating, single and satisfied? Just
Yeah.
talk about that for a minute because we have a lot of singles listening, so that's why I had to ask that
Yes.
question. And you're very successful, and you're in an industry where I know they at you. We ain't
Oh
gonna
my.
hold you. So talk about that. How do you balance that? Is that something that you pray about even before maybe a gentleman approaches you and maybe asks to take you out? Like walk us through how
Yeah.
is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a balance of like letting myself be just human and a girl. And, I've gone on dates and I've done those things. I am still single. I'm definitely ready to mingle. And whenever God's timing, I am here
Okay.
for it. But at the same time, I think just the letting go of that pressure. I think that a lot of the times we also put like too much like, emphasis on this, especially in the Christian world, right? Like you get a lot of people who get married very young, or there's this pressure of like, if you're single, then you have to be praying for that future person. And I think obviously, yes, I take that intentional moment, pray for that, my future husband. But I also just allow for God to just lean into his timing, lean into his timeline for my life, and be secure in knowing that he knows the desire of my heart. He knows that my desires of being a wife, of being a mother, and trusting that when that time is right, it'll come. And so I'm open, ready for whatever God has next, and letting myself just enjoy life and loving the season that I'm in and enjoying that, enjoying my singleness, because clearly there's something he wants to do with me now that he needs me to be just him and I first, right? So trusting that.
That's good. Last question, getting you out of here. The show is called The Fixx. If you could fix anything about, Christian culture, the business side of, gospel, CCM, what would you fix?
Um, Bringing back the humanity of our worship, of the way we walk with people, and not being afraid to get into the messy parts of people's lives and learning how to really walk with true grace. Because we say we have grace with people, but when push comes to shove, I think that a lot of the times in the church, we can be very judgmental, and I think that, yes, we correct and we correct in love, and that there's a time and place for all of those things. Yet, if we don't take the time to really put ourselves in people's shoes and walk that journey and that process, we will never really understand the true understanding of what Jesus did here on earth. He walked with us. He walked among the people. And so I think learning how to reflect Jesus and reflecting him well and truly how he intended for us to reflect him here on earth.
That's good. Listen, Melody, thank you for coming by. Please tell the people how to connect with you, follow you on all your social media platforms, and introduce your latest single.
Absolutely. So you can follow me at the Melody Adorno on all digital platforms. Also melodyadorno.com for any bookings, any inquiries. And the single Be Enthroned is out now on all digital platforms, Spotify, YouTube. Well, on YouTube actually tomorrow on Friday at 12 p.m. You'll be able to get the music video out as well. And yeah, I pray that it blesses your life, that you enjoy it. This is Be Enthroned with Joelle Barnes. And yeah, that's me.
Keep it locked. You tuned into The Fixx. You know The Fixx is in.